Hello and welcome back to another Blu-ray review, and in this video we're going to be starting a 4-part mini-series working through the brand new Eureka release called Creeping Horror. So there are 4 movies included in this set, and I was trying to think about how best to cover them as my camera thinks about how best to not focus on it. There we go. So we have Murders in the Zoo, Night Monster, Horror Island, and House of Horrors. So this is 4 movies from Universal, kind of, from the years 1933 until 1946. So yeah, there's a nice mix of early 30s to mid 40s working your way through that kind of time period of horror movies and film history, I suppose. But I previously did a review of the last Universal horror movie set that Eureka put out, which was Maniacal Mayhem, which I think all 3 of them starred Boris Karloff. Loved that set. And that one, I did all 3 movies and reviewed the Blu-ray in one video, which I enjoyed doing. It was a lot of work, but I think for this one, when you get to 4 movies, I think let's just talk about all of them individually, just as the films themselves, and then in the 4th and final review, which will be, which one comes latest chronologically here, House of Horrors, that'll be the last kind of wrap up, and I'll talk about the extras in that one, the audio commentaries and all that kind of stuff, and my full final thoughts on this release, which so far, I'm about 3/4 of the way through this. I'm really enjoying it. But first, let's get right into it with the first movie, which can be seen on the inside here with the poster. Murders in the Zoo, starring Lionel Atwill, who isn't top billed. Actually, the top billed actor in this film is Charlie Ruggles, who plays Peter Yates, who's the kind of comedic relief of the film, and plays a fairly significant part, I suppose, but it's not the typical person who gets top billing in a movie like this, so that's kind of interesting, I thought. Anyway, let's get into the film. Murders in the Zoo, 1933, pre-code movie, and it feels like it, because if you see certain films after the kind of the code came in, the Hays Code, there's a lot of things that get kind of pulled back from the toolbox for filmmakers, and they have to use a lot of suggestion to imply certain things, whether it's related to sex or violence, all sorts of things. I'm not too well versed in the code and pre-code and what you could and couldn't do exactly, but I know enough that seeing this film, it's pretty obvious that it's pre-code, because right from the beginning, we open in the jungle, and there's this pretty grisly fate for this character at the very beginning, the first scene of the movie. And just the makeup that you see, it's a pretty grim, even by today's standards, I think it's a pretty grim visual that you certainly wouldn't expect to see in a film after the code era came in Hollywood. So, as I said, Charlie Ruggles is kind of the top billed actor in this film. He plays a guy called Peter Yates, who is, he's a bit of a kind of, what would you call him? Jack of all trades, perhaps, and he comes into this zoo to apply for a job to be head of the publicity department. And he comes in with all these things, like he's a salesman, I guess is a better way of putting it. And he lands this job. And I like this kind of recurring quote when he kind of impresses someone with an idea he has. He's like, well, that's just one small idea of my ideas.
And that's just a small idea of my ideas. Oh, sure, that's just a small idea of my ideas. Oh, missed.
And he's going to be head of publicity for this zoo. Now, the film opens in the jungle, and we follow a man called Eric Gorman, played by Lionel Atwill, who is, I guess, a game hunter, and he is capturing all these exotic animals and bringing them back over and to display and house in the zoo. But the zoo is in dire straits, and so they need to kind of rouse up some funding. And so Peter Yates has the winning idea of hosting a kind of banquet, a gala, for kind of some influential people who might be able to donate some money to the zoo to keep it going. And they're going to hold this gala dinner inside the kind of building where all the cages are with all the lions and the tigers and everything, which is an interesting idea, to say the least, and just one small idea of P.T. Yates's ideas. So that's kind of like the basic setup of the story in a sense, but what's really going on is there's murders in the zoo, right? Now, I don't know if I would call this a horror film more than just a thriller, because it's really about a murderer who's killing people around this story. And we have Eric Gorman's wife, Evelyn, who is much younger than him. The actress who plays her, Kathleen Burke, I think her name was. She was like 19 when she made this film. Lionel Atwell was like 47. It's like a 30-year age gap. So she's his wife. It's not unheard of, especially in those kind of times. But you feel like she's a trophy wife, and that she wants to get out. And there is a character in the movie who she may or may not be interested in, and perhaps wants to leave her husband. And that's really the crux of where these kind of deaths start happening. And then within that, there is this kind of plot device of this I think it's a black mamba, or just a mamba, I'm not sure if there's different versions, this snake that has highly poisonous venom that they've brought back from the jungle, and that's kind of the source of how people start dying. And then the zoo needs to get shut down, and all this stuff starts kind of rolling through. I mean, the film's like an hour and 5 minutes, I think. It packs a lot in, and I really, really enjoyed it. I actually was really invested. It lagged a little bit to me towards the end, to where I was kind of, because it's revealed fairly early on who the killer is. So that suspense of, who done it, not so much in this film. But I have to say, where the film went in the final 5 minutes was phenomenal. Like, it kind of was rolling through, and I was like, oh no. And then there was a twist, and I was like, oh, and I was like, and then the full final 5 minutes is just, it just goes all in, and it just, I really love the momentum and the pacing, and have that twist kind of just corked off at the end, and you just rattle through to the final scene of the film. I thought it was phenomenal the way that this film came to a close. This was directed by Edward Sutherland. They don't really even talk about the director in the audio commentary, and I'll talk more about the audio commentaries in the fourth part of this little mini series of Blu-ray reviews, when I kind of round up my whole thoughts on the creeping horror release. But I was surprised it's more focused on the actors, not so much the director, so I can only assume he's not a notable director. But I really like the way this film was put together. They used a lot of real animals. There's a funny moment for me where Lionel Atwell is in kind of he's in the holding section, or what would you call it, like the section of the ship that's come over from the jungle, and he's with all the animals in the cages and stuff, and he's sat there with a monkey, and P.T. Yates comes in to see him, and he's sat there, and he's kind of, he's got the monkey on his lap, and then just off screen, just this hand comes out, and he's like, here, Joe, here, Joe.
Yeah, oh.
Here, Joe. Here, Joe.
And it's so obviously like the real life kind of animal handler who's taking the monkey away from the actor, but it's like the way that it's off screen is so funny to me. It's like, why not just have that, dress up the real life animal handler in like a ship's worker outfit or something, but it's just these hands come out frame and just take the monkey away. And there's a couple little things like that in the film. There's one where P.T. Yates comes in to meet Evelyn Gorman and her potential, new younger partner if she decides to leave her husband. He comes into the cabin on the ship. He's trying to get like a story and stuff for the publicity for the zoo and everything. He's trying to meet Eric Gorman, and he sees the young couple basically, and he gets a bit flustered, and the actor Charlie Ruggles, I'm like 98% sure, flubs his lines, but he kind of just, he covers it quite well. And it's just funny because it's probably one of those things where it's a mistake, and they probably just couldn't afford, or they're just like, forget about it, no one's going to notice, and they talk about in the commentaries like how like there's certain details in this film that don't add up in terms of dates and things like that, even like days of the week. And they joke about how it doesn't really matter, but also these films were not really meant to be watched over and over again. Back in this day and age in cinema, a film would get released, it would get watched, and that was it. There was no shelf life. So little mistakes like that maybe, weren't really of the highest priorities to go back and fix. But the line was something like, "Oh my goodness, did you get in the right? Did I get in the wrong cabin again?"
Oh my goodness, did I get in the wrong cabin again? Oh my goodness, did I get in the wrong cabin again?
I just found that fun. I like little movie mistakes like that. They don't really spoil the fun for me at all. So that was kind of interesting. Evelyn, the character of Evelyn, but the actress Kathleen Burke, I was really intrigued to hear more about her because I really liked, maybe not even her performance as much as her screen presence. She had a haunted quality to her, I thought, which kind of fits the character. This woman who is very much in an sexually abusive relationship with Eric Gorman. And in the commentary, they talk about how she played the Panther Woman in Island of the Lost Souls the year before this. Or it might have even been the same year, actually. But it was her first role. She kind of won it. It was kind of like a very popular kind of audition. You know, a lot of people wanted to get that role. She's the one who got it. And she kind of got typecast as the Panther Woman from Island of Lost Souls. And it kind of ruined her film career. She made, quite a decent amount of films throughout the 30s, but her final film role came 5 years after this in 1938, and then she focused on acting on stage in the 40s, and I think that's pretty much where her career petered out. And that's kind of a shame, and there was some quote that someone had said that they were also going up for the role of the Panther Woman, and the best thing that ever happened to them was that they didn't get it because of what happened to Kathleen Burke and how she was typecast and kind of only seen as the Panther Woman, which is kind of a shame, I suppose. And that kind of typecasting obviously goes back a very long time in the history of film. We have Randolph Scott in this film, who kind of emerges as the kind of the hero towards the final kind of 20 minutes of the film, I'd say. He kind of becomes the de facto kind of protagonist, I think, towards the end of the film. I only know that he is very well known for westerns, but I don't think I've ever seen him in anything. And if I have, I don't remember. But he was fine. He played Dr. Woodford and kind of comes up against Eric Gorman in a very memorable moment, I thought, in the film. There was a really nice use of special effects towards the end where a character is running away from some escaped animals and it's using rear projection and stuff. But there's a really good shot where they run behind the bars of, I guess, another cage. And so you have the physical bars on the set and then the rear projection screen behind it. And, when the shots are very quick, it almost fools you into believing that you're actually seeing the animals rush up to this actor. And I thought it was really well done and just very nicely put together, for a film in the 30s, that was a really nice use of in-camera effects that I really appreciated. Now, I said earlier that I don't know whether I would count this as a horror film per se, more of a kind of thriller. The only real sense of horror is through the animals in a sense. And even then it's kind of, you look at some of that footage and some of it's probably stock footage of the animals in the zoo. And it's kind of, it's sad to see the conditions that they're in and being locked up in cages and stuff. And so I don't tend to see the horror of it either. But apparently this film was marketed as the horror picture that will surpass all others. So, in its day, it was considered that, I suppose. But I enjoyed it as a thriller. I really had a good time with it. One line that really stood out to me and made me laugh was when Peter Yates is giving a talk at the gala that he had the idea for. And he really wants to get this photo opportunity. So he tells the reporters, like, I'm gonna pull my ear. That's when you take the pictures, right? And he's doing the speech. He's pulling his ear, and they're not seeing him, so he's pulling both his ears. And he keeps going. He's trying to get their attention, and you realize he's got nothing more to say, and he's just spinning the wheels and really saying nothing. And then one of the things he comes out with, it's a very long line, but the beginning of it is something to the effect of, it is with, however, a pulsing lump of gratitude in my throat. That I blah 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 blah. I love that turn of phrase. It is with a pulsing lump of gratitude in my throat. I really like Charlie Ruggles in this. I don't know whether this is his kind of shtick, the comedic persona. He's a former drunk. They mention how he's only just recently got off the drink. So I'd like to see him in more stuff. Coming away from this, that's my main takeaway. Lionel Atwill, he does work well as the villain of the film, but I felt there's a particular scene where he's kind of making, not sexual advances, but he's kind of hinting that he very much forces himself on his wife and has done in the past. And the creepiness of it, I don't know, it was weird. And I felt like I was watching him act, and that's kind of I don't say the death knell, but when I'm watching a film and I feel the actor performing, it really pulls me out of it a little bit. And I'm like, he doesn't do a bad job. And from what I understand, he is well noted in the kind of horror pantheon of playing these kind of characters. He has a face for a villain too, and he certainly, he does well. But there was that one scene where I didn't buy the whole, I don't know, the fact that he was going to force himself on her. He's like, why do I want you so much and all this? And it kind of didn't hold much water for me in that particular moment. But he does serve the part well, especially towards the end, as the villain that you want to see get his comeuppance. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was a lot of fun, some memorable characters, a little bit of, towards the end, all these animals get set out, and you can see that there's a bit of a ruckus going on, and there's a couple of lions, and there's a leopard, and they're kind of jumping around and shit. And I think I read that there's been a few cuts from the film, which is of course imposed by the BBFC, not Eureka. And I'm all for that. If there's any shots of animals getting hurt, I'm fine not seeing that. I know there are some people who really want the purity of how the film was released, and I'm with you on that. But for me, seeing animals get hurt or even killed is something I'm totally fine with being removed from a film. But I totally respect and understand people who see it the other way. It's not to suggest that they want to see animal cruelty, but I understand the purity aspect of wanting to see a film as it was released. But sometimes when we see films from this era in particular that may have lost 5-10 minutes along the way, I'm certainly not bothered about a couple of seconds being removed that shows animals in real peril or distress or pain or even being killed. So I did read that there was, I think, a couple of cuts, or one or two, I'm not sure how many, or what the extent is, but I could tell from that scene there was probably more where the animals were, you could tell that it was a bit chaotic and they were kind of thrown in there. But yeah, I just like little scenes like on the boat, and I like the characters, I like the writing. It was a very good film. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's it for now. The next one I'll be talking about is Night Monster from, what's the year that one was released? Jumping ahead to 1941. So yeah, moving ahead to the next decade. And the next two will be then Horror Island and House of Horrors. But I'm really enjoying this set so far as I'm working my way through it. And this actually features on the front here Lionel Atwill, and then our other characters there too. So yeah. Really enjoyed it. Let me know if you've seen it, what you thought, and if you've seen any of the other films in the set. And look forward to the next 3 parts of this review of this set. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.